As the Senate nears a final vote on Trump's so-called big beautiful bill, both parties are sharpening their political strategies. Republicans say the stakes are nothing short of avoiding a recession and a Democratic legislative takeover in 2026. Meanwhile, the DNC just launched a nationwide push to block the GOP agenda. Joining us now to discuss the political stakes and what each side is fighting for, our political strategist, Armin Kurdian. He's a retired U.S. Navy captain and former California State Senate candidate, and Robin Byro, Democratic strategist and former Obama regional campaign director. Thank you both so much for joining us. Now, Armin, starting with you, we had debate around the bill all weekend and today's vote-a-rama. Where do you think Senate Republicans are on point, and where are they perhaps missing the point when it comes to what the American people actually want to see in a bill like this?
Hi, Tiffany. Ultimately, this bill is going to get passed. I think that just similar to this administration, previous administrations, we're missing a great opportunity to try to bring spending under control. I think there's been some misconceptions about some of the cuts to Medicaid and other things. For example, the work requirements that are going back in were taken out during the Biden administration, but a lot of the other opportunities to cut spending, or perhaps what some people may perceive as overly generous tax cuts, really are going to have an impact to our debt and deficit. The idea that we're going to be growing 4 to 5% per year to try to grow our way out of it, we haven't done that in a really, really long time under any president. So I think the American people would like to see spending be brought under control, because really that's what's going to help bring interest rates down.
And Robin, in your view, what do Democratic voters want to see their lawmakers do in this situation? Do you see it happening?
Honestly, what Democratic voters want to see, Tiffany, is a stop to this. They are concerned about some of the tax cuts. Now, those were just passed. The 2017 tax cuts expired. That vote just passed. So that's the thing now. But more than that, I agree with Armin. The American public at large wants to see some spending cuts. They want to see the national deficit get brought back into something that's manageable, because right now the per taxpayer share is $323,000 for every person who pays taxes in this country. It's unforgivably large. That's not a debt that any of us want to pass down to our children, Tiffany.
And Armin, on that note, we do see Senator Rand Paul saying it's going to increase the deficit. You also have Tom Tillis holding out. He did say he's not going to be running for re-election here. But when it comes to passing it, how confident are you that it will pass?
Ultimately, I think this bill is going to pass. It's probably going to pass by one vote. I would not be surprised if it's 50-50 with the vice president voting. And then, of course, it's got to go back to the House. And there's already some House Freedom Caucus Republicans that have said they're going to torpedo it. So it's got to go through the process again. If it doesn't, at this point of the fiscal year, if it doesn't get passed, we might actually be in a worse situation than if we're stuck with a bill that could be a lot better than it actually is. But, let's go back. We had over $8 trillion of debt added in the last administration. We're on track to maybe add another $8 trillion under this administration. We're spending $1 billion in interest debt in our current budget, which is nearly 10% of revenues that we're pulling. This is really, more than anything, is the biggest drag in our economy, because if you look at the amount of money we spend in deficit spending every year, that pretty much amounts to our GDP.
And Robin, on that note, what are you watching most closely as, the senators are voting today?
The numbers, actually. I love to look at usdebtclock.org and look at the numbers, because what Armin said is exactly true. Right now, the interest that we're paying on this is larger than what we spend every year on our national defense. The two largest things are, of course, Medicaid and Social Security, followed by the interest that we spend on our national deficit. It's wildly out of control. In fact, it's twice what it was 25 years ago in the year 2000. So when I first kind of came into my political being. So I've always been a deficit hawk. I applaud some of my Democratic colleagues who are keeping tabs on this, and some of the Republican ones as well. I actually really appreciate Senator Rand Paul for sticking to his guns on this. But look, Republicans can only afford to lose 3 votes right now. By my count, they've got 2 that are pretty much no's. And I agree with Armin. I think it's going to come down to the tie-breaking vote. But I want to say my eyes are also on one Democratic senator. That's John Fetterman. He's the wild card for me.
He has, quite a political career there and quite a lot of changes that we've seen with him, too. Armin, on that note, though, you mentioned Medicaid earlier. Now, changes to Medicaid is a point of contention, not just between Republicans and Democrats, but also within the Republican Party itself now after the weekend's debates and today's vote-a-rama. How do you expect that issue to play out?
Let's look at, Medicaid, Medicare, and frankly, Social Security growth. The rate of growth of these programs has well exceeded inflation over the last several years. There has been no real effort to bring healthcare costs under control because we just keep pouring more and more money into the system, and it just continues to allow money to be spent. I mean, my mother-in-law went through some procedures a couple of years ago. She goes to one hospital, they do a bunch of tests on her, they go to another hospital just a month later. They were going to do the exact same tests, which would have cost, the taxpayers several $1,000s. And then we said, hey, why are we doing this whole process all over again? I do believe that it's fair to have work requirements for people who are able-bodied and able to work, who are perhaps below the poverty level. We don't want to kick people who really need Medicaid off of the rolls or Medicare, but really lately it's been greatly expanded to people who I don't think really need it. I think there needs to be more means testing for healthcare, but at the same time, there needs to be more care done at the local hospitals to control costs because they're complaining about, rural hospitals are going to close, or this is going to happen, or that's going to happen. Well, that's really fine. How much are you paying yourselves? How much, are you putting marble down on the floors or whatever? Where's all this money going to that's going into our healthcare system? So we've got to bring those costs under control. If we don't do that, we're going to bankrupt ourselves. And
Robin, how are you viewing the Medicaid issue?
I had an issue today with what Carolyn Levitt says about that it would not affect funding for Medicare and Medicaid. That's not what I'm seeing from the analysis that I've looked at from the CBO. So this is a tough one, and I want them to be honest and transparent about this because we really can't afford a sick populace.
Now, Armin, as we've been talking, it's a very broad bill which could impact the country both economically and socially, for example, requiring people to work in order to get the benefits, as we were talking about, or reducing government support for things like renewable energy projects that actually could lose votes for Republicans. What is the overall strategy here?
Gosh, what is the overall strategy? I'm not sure there is a very answer to that question. If you see how a lot of times it's like, well, so long as you put this in here, if you put this in here, and ultimately it's like everybody gets their money, everybody gets their spending, and that's how they continue to keep themselves in office. And everybody just they get what they want. That's a rider to the bill. Whether or not they actually, they may agree with the bill to begin with, but they may pretend that they don't in order to get additional spending for their district or an additional tax break or a tax cut. It's the system that we actually have. There's very little altruism in the Senate, like Rand Paul, who just genuinely believes doing the right thing for the entire country. Obviously, if you're elected as a senator in a state, you want to do the best thing for your state. But my biggest concern for this country going forward is not some external terrorist threat. It's not cybersecurity. It's our national debt. When you look at how much we are actually spending and the interest rates that we have right now, because every year as debt expires, it's being refinanced at a higher rate. So you could even cut spending today, just it in half, and over the next several years, would probably still be going up, or at least stay flat. Still rate. If we don't do anything, we're paying 0.8 trillion interest payments 8-9 years from now, and we're going to become a very debtor nation. It prevents the United States from being that it can actually be.
And Robin, the bill also calls for no tax on tips or overtime, something that Kamala Harris also pitched during the election cycle. Now, there is also an extension of the tax cuts. Do you think opposing this bill so staunchly could actually alienate some Democratic or independent voters?
Tiffany, I hadn't thought of that, but you're exactly right. It definitely could. And those are people that we need to regain ground with. The Democrats have always tried to paint ourselves as the blue-collar party, the blue-collar worker. And it's going to look bad on us come the midterms if hundreds of thousands of servers across the country don't get this that was promised by both candidates. So we've got to deliver on this. I expect some concessions to be made, but I really hope that no tax on tips stays in there. And to Armin's point about the deficit spending, the way I've explained it to my children is it would be sort of like me taking out credit cards to pay bills every month. And that's just not a position that anyone wants to be in. And that's kind of how we're doing this as a country right now. And it's unsustainable.
And Robin, very shortly, looking ahead to the midterms, the DNC did just launch the organizing summer to counter the GOP ahead of key elections this year and also the 2026 midterms. Talk to us about the plan of attack here.
Right now, Tiffany, we're focused on municipal elections across the country. We've got to try and regain some momentum. So many Democrats have checked out from politics. They've literally turned off the news and turned off notifications. So we've got to try and re-engage them at a local grassroots level, because at the end of the day, all politics is local. That's what we're focused on right now.
And Armin, very quickly, how do you see Republicans countering that?
I think the Republicans are going to focus a lot on the successes they've had with the border. I think they're also going to look at perhaps reinvigorating a Department of Defense, a greater esprit de corps within the DoD. I think that's what they're going to focus on, but also all over the country, like Robin said, a lot of local Republicans at the county level are very, very focused on those local elections, school boards, city councils, healthcare districts, those kinds of things, because those are basically your feeder folks that are going to eventually move up and into other and other races at the higher level, because you can't just necessarily jump into Congress. You need to start somewhere.
Armin Kurdi and Robin Biro, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thanks, Tiffany.
My pleasure.